All right. We learned in this week's Torah portion that Yaakov, Jacob, fought with an angel. And that doesn't really make too much sense, how a person could fight with an angel, especially when you consider that we learned a few weeks ago that there was an angel that destroyed like these 5 cities of Sodom and Amorah, and there was all the other 5 kingdoms, whatever, that were conquered. That were conquered previously by Melech Sodom and Amorah. The whole fight that there was over there, they were conquered by Kardor Omer and those other people. Anyway, so here we have one angel. Yaakov fights with his angel, which you can say that's pretty amazing. But on the other hand, this whole week's Torah portion starts off with Yaakov sending a whole group of angels. So he was controlling angels and he fought with angels. The whole business is really quite not understandable. But when you think that a Jew is really higher than the angels, because the Jews are the servants and the sons and the wife also with them, the marriage to the creator of the whole universe. So he creates all the angels. So all these angels are just creations. And Yaakov, being a Jew, he's connected to the creator of the whole business. But that's when he's in his source. Here in the world, it's not so simple. That's what Yaakov has to do. His whole thing is to bring this into the world. That's what God wants. That's why God creates the world. That's why God created the world, why he creates the world constantly. So we don't know who we are. And a lot of times only when we're put into difficult situations, excuse me, as does our true essence nature come out. And hopefully that's what's going on right now. The Jews are being forced to bring out their true Jewish identity, who they are. So here we are. Vayabek Ishimo. And so Yaakov was alone. He sent his family over this river Yabok, which we learned about what that was yesterday. That was the source of unity and blessing and holiness. Yichud, Bracha, Kedusha. And he sent his family over there, and Yaakov stayed behind to draw this above holy, the super holy level that he sent his family to draw this into the world. And so the first thing is he fought with his angel. So Vayabek Ishimo, he fought with an angel the whole night. It says that the angel tried to defeat him, and he didn't, but he hit the thigh of Yaakov, which there's all sorts of meanings of what this is. And here we're not dealing with what happened. We're dealing with Yaakov's victory. So here we go. But Yabek Ishimo, a person fought with him. Yaakov fought with an angel, and it says he fought with the angel of Esav. And they know that's known, Shemilchama Zu, that this war, this battle, who Milchamas Assam, this is the war of the devil. The Sitra, the Kedusha, the devil is called the angel of death. It's called the evil impulse. It's called the what is it? The devil, Satan. And another one of the names is the Samach Mem. Samach, that's an it. It's the war of the Samach Mem, of the devil against holiness. Now, what is the devil? Basically, what is the devil? Basically, the devil is egotism. That's what the devil is. It's false egotism. The devil is false egotism. And it is possible to transform it. And that's what he was fighting. And that's what he was fighting. It's possible to transform. Not only is it possible, but it is promised that's going to happen. That's the whole idea of the Jewish people. The Jewish people are here in the world in order to transform the false egotism of the world and direct it to the creator of egotism. So God is creating everything. And he's creating also the tendency, the ability, the urge to be an egotist. And God created that just that way. Some say that was hinted at when it says that God created man in his image, that every human being feels like God, especially the Jews. So God did it, he did it. So therefore there's he gets angry at the Jews on a regular basis. But on the other hand, it's not a nice thing to say, but I'll say it. It's his. He started it. He made us this way. He created the whole world. Nevertheless, we're expected to fight against our own negative, egotistical urges and tendencies. And that's the battle of Yaakov against this angel, the source. The Sitra de Kedusha, the war of the Psalm, sometimes it's called the Sitra Achra, the other side against the side of holiness. That's the way God created the world. That evil can oppose God. Okay, like the war of God, it's a war of God, the Amalek against Amalek. Kenoda, like it's known, you call Kenoda mina pardis. Shemasha nega bakaf Yerech Yaakov. It's known from this book, Kabbalah book called the Pardis, that which the angel touched the thigh of Yaakov, shepagam atar the nevuah, that he hurt the place of prophecy. Ad the asa Shmuel, until came Shmuel, Samuel, Batikin, and he fixed it up lenetzach forever. Hanetzach, I'm sorry, and he fixed up netzach. There's an argument whether the human body is in the form of the 10 sefirot of God. That's another meaning when it says that man is created in God's image. So the head is Chachma, Bina, and Das, intellect, and the heart, especially the right arm, the left arm, which are the area of the heart, that's kindness and severity, and Tiferet, the middle pillar, that's the body. And the thigh, the right thigh, it says, is Netzach, and the left thigh is Hod. Netzach and Hod. And Netzach is our ability to defeat anything that's against us. And Hod is the ability to surrender. The ability to surrender to good things and to defeat bad things. And the angel hit the thigh. So there's different opinions whether it's the right thigh or the left thigh, and that corresponds to Chanukah and to Purim. So nevertheless, it says that Shmuel came, this is according to the opinion that it was the right thigh, and he fixed up Netzach. Like it says, V'gam Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker. It says the eternal one, Netzach also means the eternal one. It means victory, but the eternal one will not lie. Okay, so that's the battle that Yaakov fought against the angel, and Yaakov did not lose, but the angel made a wound on him, and this wound, it says, was in his power of victory, and came along Samuel, the first prophet, Samuel, and I guess the first official prophet, and he fixed up this aspect of Netzach, so that now there could be the ability to defeat our own negative urges of the world. Okay, good. That's the story. That's what it says in the Pardis in this Kabbalistic book. L'cheor, at first glance, ain't no movement. It's not understood. How could it be? She'asam, that the devil Nilcham can war neged kedusha, against holiness. Halo kol ikar chayot klipa, all the life of klipa. Klipa means the shell, external forces. Another word for the devil. Who mikadusha? It all comes from holiness. God is creating this. It's not that there's two powers in the world. There's only one power in the world. There's only one creator. The creator creates everything. How can it be that the creator creates evil that you got to fight against it? And it has the power to win. Okay, Indian, like it says, Loka Avram, it's like Donald Duck beating up Walt Disney. He's creating them all the time. How can he defeat him? Jumps out and he strangles them. How can that be? If there's right, if the creator is gone, then there's no creation. It's like a figure in a movie. You go to a movie theater, and one of the figures jumps out and smashes the projector. And the projector is projecting the picture. How can it come out As soon as it destroys the projector, that's it. The picture is gone. If the forces of evil would win, they would defeat God, so to speak. Then there would be no world. There would be no creation whatsoever. So how could it possibly fight against Kedusha? It's everything. The life of everything comes from God. God can't destroy. So let's say that that's what it wants. It wants to commit suicide. But how has it got the power to do such a thing like that? To go against God? God doesn't want things to be. God wants there to be a world, and the power of evil wants to destroy the world. So how can the power of evil possibly win? Doesn't make any sense. How can it win? How can it defeat God? Doesn't make any sense. But what you can say, oh, maybe there's two powers. That's exactly what the powers of evil want you to say. There's two powers. There's God and there's evil. And you can take your choice. It's not so. The essence of Judaism is that God is one. That's the motto of Judaism. God is one. God is one means there's no other force except for God. That's all there is. So how can it be? How can it possibly be? How can it fight against Abraham? How can it fight against holiness? Can you, like it says, not like Avram that came from him, Yishmael, is Musri HaChesed. Avram had too much kindness. Had too much kindness, but you can't defeat it totally. The source can't be defeated. Lasi Lavo, it says in the future, Kishabor, when the world becomes refined, as Kasiv, it says, Vetruach Hatuma, Avir Mina Oretz. It says, then God says, I'm going to stop the power of bad. Chel Bala Vayaki Eno. It says it swallowed up energy and it vomited it. Bala Hamavas Lanetzach, that God will reject, he'll evict, he'll stop creating anything bad. Even death will stop forever. And it'll be like it never existed. You can see that it says, Eita Sher Shalat Adam Ba'adam Luralo. It says there's a time. So if so, God can say, okay, I'm turning off the lights. There's no more evil. No more evil. So good, there is no more evil. But how can it be that in the meantime, that evil can fight against God? How can it, and it has a chance that it can defeat God? It doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make any sense. It says, Eita Sher Shalat Adam Ba'adam Luralo. It says that there's a time when the man can rule over the man of evil, egotism, can rule over holiness, Luralo, for bad. How can bad have the ability to fight against its creator? So this is a big mystery. This is a very big mystery. And this is the mystery that Judaism, especially Hasidut, and especially Hasidut Chabad, is centering on. This mystery. What's the mystery? How can it be that God is one and that there's evil in the world? Huh? Or in the language of, right, whatever, the simple man on the street, why do bad things happen to good people? Now, why did King David suffer so much? Why did the Jewish people suffer so much? But King David, his whole life was just suffering. Abraham, the same thing. Abraham just tests, difficulties, problems, trials, troubles, tribulations. Why? How can there be so much problem? And here it really boils up, comes to a head. The power of evil, Esav, wants to defeat Yaakov, and Yaakov has to fight for his life. He has to fight for his life to say, how could it possibly be such a thing like this? Yaakov was the embodiment of godliness in the world. The answer is, because God, the emanator, blessed be He, who Soviv Kolomim is called, surrounding all the worlds. And in front of God, darkness is like light. Shemamis biyadayim tatafes, v'hi be'echel melech. It says that a little spider or something, a little lizard, when it gets into your house, so it starts to eat up your food or whatever, you get rid of it. But if it's in the palace of a king, so the palace is so big, it's so that the king doesn't even notice it. No one even notices it, right? A little tiny spider or something is in the corner of the palace. the palatial room of the king is like 15 stories high. He's sitting in this, and there's a little tiny spider way up there, like 150 feet up. Nobody notices it. It says that's the thing of evil. Evil, it says that it's not noticeable. Why is it not noticeable? Because to God, God, there's no difference between one and the other. There's no difference between bad and good. So all these Eastern religions that talk about how God is just in indescribable and that he doesn't care and that he's above everything and it's just this power of being, they got a very good point. They have a very good point. This idea that God chose the Jews, this is an idea which is totally incomprehensible. I mean, the idea that God exists is also incomprehensible, but at least it's a little bit comprehensible. Maybe there was a creator, could be. I mean, the world got here somehow, or either it was always here. How did it begin? Maybe it could be there was a creator, but that God really cares, there's absolutely no necessity to say anything like that. So from this level, which is called Soviv Kol Omim, which God doesn't care, where everything is equal to God, God is creating everything from nothing. So everything is basically nothing. So therefore, she'eno tofeset, therefore bad, it doesn't take up any place by God. It's, so to speak, only the laws of nature. It can be a spider or whatever it is, can be in the palace of a king, and the king doesn't care because it's too big. The same thing about God. Like it says, Elo Malachim, like it says the end of this week's Torah portion. These are the kings that ruled in the land of Edom before there was a king and the Jewish people. Before God chose the Jewish people, so to speak, let's say at Mount Sinai, so there could be bad. Okay, this is not even before in time, but this is also before in level. Shalifnei Melech B'nai Israel, this is what's called the land, the kings of Edom, like we said, the world of Tohu. Remember we learned that surrounds all the worlds. It's above any definition. Ela Dahainu Davka Lifnei Melech, but only before God chose the Jews. But afterwards it says Melech ein ba'Edom. It says there is no real king in Edom. Because because it's not drawn in an inner way, but in only the Sitra Kedusha. Meaningful life is only drawn down in the side of holiness. Davka. Yor Hashem panav itanu sela. God will shine his face only with us. So here we have a whole new idea of holiness. What is the difference between, for instance, the Torah, a Torah scroll, and any other book? What's the difference between the Holy Temple and the Eiffel Tower? What is the difference between them? Is there really a difference? What's the difference between the Jews and the non-Jews? What's the difference between Shabbat and the weekdays? Is there any difference? We say at Motzi Shabbat, we say lahavdil, to separate between holy and mundane. Because as soon as the mundane days come, the weekdays come, so it doesn't seem that there's really any difference between the Jews and the non-Jews and the Holy Temple and that, or Israel or any other place. That's what's going on right now in the world. This is the war that's going on in the world right now. Is Israel just another country? Are the Jews just another people? Is the Torah just another book? Excuse me. Shabbat is just another day. The commandments are just another religion. There's all the other religion. Or maybe are the Jews holy, and Israel is holy, and the temple is holy, and the commandments are holy. And there's a difference between holy and mundane. So he says, well, the fact is that after God gave the Torah to the Jews, and this is the whole battle that Yaakov is fighting, that holiness only came to the Jewish people. And true life is found in holiness. And eventually the Jews will convince the whole world to partake of it. True life. Klippas, and if so, the powers of evil, of separateness, of destruction, they receive what's called acharayim. They receive from what's called the backside of God. They receive from what's called the backside of God. Command the shadik batakasvi, like God throwing over his shoulders. The nikra Elohim achirim, they're called other gods. The Fishi Yisrael, because the Jewish people, mamshichim kach, they draw this down, liot or ein sof, that infinite light of God can be only the mi shabatel, and a person that surrenders himself to godliness. So here we have a whole different type of reality. We have a type of different reality. If you want to, we can say it's almost three types of reality. There's one type of reality where there's good and bad. There's a higher type of reality, which is even above that, right? Where there's no good and bad, everything just exists. And that's where evil comes from. Then there's a higher type of reality than that, a third type, which that's how God really cares, and he really wants the good over the bad. But in the middle, there's all this confusion in the middle, in this physical world, and the battle is over the physical world. Who's going to rule over the physical world, right? Will it be this power, it's called tohu, surrounding level of godliness, where there's no difference between bad and good, just everybody does whatever they want, whatever comes, whoever is the strongest wins? Or does it come from the side of holiness, which means whoever is surrendered more to the truth and to God, that he wins? What's going to be? So, it's not so simple. We see it's not so simple. We see that in the world, who seems to be winning? Well, I mean, you just look in the newspapers and you'll see that that seems that not the good side is winning. And Techila in the beginning of the bittul was in Chabad. Okay, so this is the battle that Yaakov is fighting. Yaakov is fighting a battle. Will the Jewish people have the power to defy and to defeat and to transform the bad to good? Okay, so what is the sign of defeat? The sign of how can we victory? Let's say victory. How can we be victorious? Netzach. We said netzach. How can we be victorious over the bad in the world, or even more, the bad in ourselves? So let's start with ourselves. Every Jew is a whole world. So the Rebbe once said about the Israeli government, he said that every Jew has a little Gentile inside of him. If you conquer the Gentile inside of you, Gentile means being normal. If you conquer the Gentile inside of you, then you can conquer the little Gentile inside, then you can conquer the big Gentile outside of you. So that's basically, if you look at what's going on in the world now, the whole thing depends on the attitude of the Jews. Right? As soon as the Jews get the right attitude, then the whole business will change around. So it says that, what do the Jews have to have? What's their attitude supposed to be? It's supposed to be surrender to God, surrender to the Torah, surrender to the truth. Then it's a whole different business, right? God wants there to be an army, he wants there to be a victory, but it has to be on God's terms, not on our terms. So let's see how that's called bittul. Bittul means, what do you want to call it? Bittul means being harmonious, doing what you're supposed to do. Bittul. In Hebrew, it's called hatama. Hatama. Bittul means you fit in. Right? You have a big puzzle, and you could put the pieces however you want to. Just put glue on a big piece of paper and just stick the pieces wherever you want, and that's it. But if you want the puzzle to come out the way it's supposed to come out, so then each piece has to be in its proper place. That's called bittul. Bittul means everything has to be in its place, what it's supposed to do. Right? Your heart works, your lungs work, when they have bittul, when they're doing their job. And that's the Jewish people, when they do their job, what they're supposed to do, then the world is healthy. That's called bittul. Okay, but it's not so simple. So that's the battle. That's the battle. Are we going to surrender ourselves, to link ourselves, to connect ourselves to God? Like in an orchestra, you have the sheet music in front of you, but you don't want to play that music. You want to be noticed in the crowd. Your mother and your uncle are sitting there or something like that. You play whatever you want to, so everybody notices you. But on the other hand, you wreck the whole thing up. The same thing is in life. You do what you're supposed to do, then everything works very well. You want to be a big egotist and stick out, so you wreck the whole picture. So that's called bittul. Bittul means fitting in, doing what you're supposed to do. So that's our power to overcome any evil, egotism, bad, destructive forces, being surrendered to God, who, first of all, begins with Chabad. Let's start with ourselves. We have to fix ourselves up. The bad which is inside of us, the goyish asher bekirbecha, the non-Jew which is inside of us, the feeling of being natural, being normal. Right? So the Jewish people are here to conquer that. What does it mean? First of all, to surrender yourself, it starts off with your mind. Chachma bin and das. Shehem, that they are that they are bechinas bittul, they are surrendered really. First of all, you can surrender them to God. You start thinking, Chassidut. You start thinking about God. You start thinking, God is really creating me. God is really creating everything. How can this possibly be? That's the idea. Then you start to understand it. That now it's called Bina. Understanding is Bina. The idea was Chachma. Then you take it to your heart. Oh, that's called Dat. Taking it into your heart. Now you have to fix up your emotions. Afterwards, it's drawn down into your emotions, that they are drawn from your Chabad. According to what your ideas about God are, and what your ideas about reality, that's how you start to react. What you love, what you hate, what you want, what you. Al Yadei Yizboner, by means of contemplation. So again, the Rebbe is talking about here, you want to fix the world up, you have to fix yourself up. You fix yourself up, 90% of the job is done. It's not so simple, but okay, how do you do it? First of all, you have to think about what God is. Then you have to try to understand the ideas that you have about God. Then after that, you have to start to realize them. Then after that, you have to change your personality, your emotions. How do you do it? Hitbonenut, contemplate. And then there can be created the excitement of the heart, the Ava v'yira, and love and fear. What do you have love and fear for? You start to feel that God is really valuable. But like we say, somebody gives you a check, and it's a check for $1 million, but it doesn't have your name on it, so you're not excited. As soon as it has your name on it, then you understand. Oh, now you start to ask questions. 1 second, how do I deserve $1 million? Why in the world is this a good check? Maybe it's just a joke. Maybe it's not true. Then you start to understand. Once you understand that this check is really real and it's really for you, you go to the bank and they say, yes, Mr. Groys, this check is for you. You can take your $1 million. How would you want it? You want it in hundreds? You want a cashier's check? You start to realize, well, this is really true. This is really so. I just can't believe it. It says, but we'd like to advise you, though, that you should get yourself a manager of your funds, and maybe even a couple bodyguards to take the money. Maybe you could deposit it in our bank. And you're starting to think, well, this is really my money. I can't believe it. I can't believe when you start to believe it, who would give me this money? This is just fantastic. It really belongs to me. That, in other words, your chachma bin and dat, that you started to understand. You don't even have the money in your hands yet. You didn't see it. Your understanding all of a sudden arouses. Dat means reality. You realize it's mine. That arouses your love. And also, it said, don't get too excited, Mr. Groys. If you take this money out, there could be people waiting for you outside. I would advise you, all of a sudden you have fear. Oh, maybe somebody's going to take this money from me. I don't want to do that. What should I do? Maybe I'll misinvest. I'll invest it wrong. Right? All the stories about people who won the lottery and bad things, they don't go to your mind. So it says, first of all, Chachma bin. Now let's take this, forget it, not about money, about God. You start thinking about God. God is really creating me. God's creating everything. He's creating money. He's creating, you start to think, is it really so? It's really mine. And then after that, you start to get emotional. It's really true. God is really creating me. God really cares about me. This is just amazing. God is creating the whole world. Then you have love and fear. Why? Because you're thinking about the greatness of God. But your emotions, this is not true surrender like it was in Chachma bin and Das. When it was in Chachma bin and Das, if you really understood the ideas, then you really were just totally knocked out. But when it comes to your emotions, then there's sort of like two things. There's I feel that God is great. I love God. I fear God. There's the I and there's God. But afterwards, so when it was in your mind, then there could be true surrender. All there is God, nothing except for him. When you come into the world, it's not so simple anymore. But then you can also draw it into your emotions. And afterwards, Netzach and Hod. This is the battle of Yaakov. Netzach and Hod. Netzach and Hod. This is, you read the Yoter. This is even more. A descent. This is only coming from yourself and to others. How you react to the world, even if you don't understand. It's called resolution. Resolution. You made a resolve to surrender yourself, even though you don't understand. Okay, it says the Modim Chachamim LaRabi Meir. It says Hod, the wise men, they were surrendered to Rabbi Meir, even though they didn't understand him. Same, we surrender ourselves to God, even we don't understand. Or the Hotzimi Koach Alapol, to bring all of this intellect and emotions to actual in the world, to give over to others, to react to the world, Lilamed La'achirim, to teach others, or to give charity, or etc. Afal Pikein, nevertheless, Nimshach Behen, Bechinas Bittel, La'oren Sof Baruch Hu, Ad Shen Nimshach, until it was drawn down to Malchut of Asiyah. Never, if you really think, even though you're thinking about God, and God is infinite. It says, nevertheless, you can bring these ideas about God, the excitement that you have in your mind, you can bring it to your emotions, you can bring it into actual action, into the physical world. She's sofa kedusha, that's the final level of holiness. That's what really God wants, that it should be in the final level. And even the physical world, the deeds that you do, the things that you say, will be included in the surrender to God. That's the battle that Yaakov is fighting with Esav. You can fight it in your house right now. You can finish thinking about God and getting the idea in your mind what God is, then battling with your emotions. Is God really real, or am I really real? Come on, God is really creating me. What are you talking about, right? That's Esav. Yeah, God is creating me every single X. This is amazing. That's Yaakov. It's a battle. Umisham, from there, you pored yod alma de prudim. But from there, it can be separated to be a separate world. As soon as you lose this feeling of godliness, then all of a sudden the world becomes separate. And you think that God exists, but he's like the God of gods. God is stronger than me. He's smarter than me. He's bigger than me, but I'm in the middle. I'm the main thing. Shetofes is makam, the person grabs a place for himself. If so, you've surrendered yourself to God. You've surrendered your mind to your creator, your heart. But when these feelings and these ideas, when they stop, or when you get into the world, then it's a little bit hard, a little bit more difficult. So how can it be that now a person who's a tzaddik, a total tzaddik, like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, for instance, so he was totally devoted to the creator all the time. He was just the ultimate of healthy Jew. All constantly, he was connected to the creator of the universe. Same thing with King David. All the time. King David had to fight big battles. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai also had to run away from the Romans, but nevertheless totally connected. But every other person in the world, every other Jew in the world, no matter how high you are, I mean, every generation that says that there's one that's a total tzaddik, they have a little bit of egotism in the world. Where does this egotism come from? It says, where does it come from? From acharei or, from after. It says after the skin of Malchut. Malchut is the lowest of the worlds. Hainu bechinas tzirufi otiot derek nikvei or. Oh, so the whole world is like one big body of God. The world is one big unit. That's this idea of hashgacha pratis, that God directs everything. Everything is interconnected in the world. Well, just like a body has in it hairs, and these hairs have basically no life to them. They have no life to them, the hairs. And the hairs come from follicles. Yeah. There's the root of the hair. So there's those holes in your skin where the hair comes out. That says that from that place of the holes in your skin, that God also, so to speak, the world is like one big body. There's holes in the skin of the creation. The creation is the lowest part of godliness, like your skin is the most external part of yourself. So it says from these follicles, is that the right word? I think it is. There comes out, there's the hole, and there's a space that there can come out these different combinations of the words of creation of godliness, but they don't have any life, just like hairs don't. And that's what it says in this week's Torah, Haftorah. I put it up. You can see it's really good. Ovadia, a very unusual prophecy. I mean, it's one paragraph. That's the whole entire prophecy. The whole book of Ovadia is one paragraph. Well, it says but it prophesies to the non-Jews, and it says, "Im tagbia kenesher," if you elevate yourself like an eagle, from there I will bring you down. Sheim magbim et atzmo b'chutzpah, that all of these forces of bad that are in the world, they are coming from the backside, if you want to call it, from the follicles of the hairs of it, but nevertheless they exist. Because they exist, they say, if I'm here, it must be that I'm the king, I'm God. They're people that really feel that I'm not just in the image of God, I am God. And everybody has this feeling. The chutzpah, that's what's called chutzpah zu, lamaila, this idea of chutzpah, of, how do you say, brazenness, to go against God who's creating you. He sherotzim lianek me or Ein Sof, wants to nurture from Ein Sof Shelo yedei kedusha, not by means of holiness. Sheyam shachas habitl animshach al yedei Yisrael. This is drawn by means of the Jewish people. Ki mizeh ein laem yanika rak me'achrei or. The holy things that the Jewish people do to bring godliness into the world is really what's keeping the world going. Because God is creating the world. There's only one God. That's the God of Israel. And the God of Israel is creating the whole world. And the God of Israel is creating the whole world, and he's revealing his godliness in the world every time a Jew does something that's holy. And from this holiness, the powers of selfishness and destruction get their life force. Where do they get their life force? It says from the little holes in the skin of Malchut. But they want to get everything. They want to come to this level from which they exist. Soon we'll get to Purim, and we'll talk about that. Purim is Haman comes from Amalek, and soon we'll come to the Purim. That's really this holiday that Haman said he was a very spiritual person. Haman, he knew Kabbalah, he knew all the secrets. Haman, that's why he built a gallows 50 amas high, according to the 50 levels of Bina. It says, and Haman knew one thing: I exist. If I'm here, it's a sign that I'm godly. I call the shots. And he has a good point. Who's creating him? God is creating him. If God is creating him, it must be that he agrees with me. So it's because Haman and all the forces of evil, also this angel of Esav, they come from this level where it says the darkness is like light. We talked about it in the beginning of the class. This middle level where there's no bad or there's no good. Everything is being created from nothing. She'ein bechin is bittul. Over there's no surrender. The tofus makam bad has no surrender to the good. It doesn't take up any place at all. If you do good and it doesn't improve God doesn't care what you do from this level. The Gam Shemamit that says like we said before, even this little spider or little lizard or something is when it's in the palace of the king, that it can get you nurture. From them, all the forces of evil, which there's a lot of them, they get their nurture. They want it that they shouldn't have to receive through holiness at all. That explains in Chassidut. We just learned it in Likutei Torah that was the reason for the Tower of Babel. They created the Tower of Babel they knew Kabbalah, they knew these deep secrets of creation, and they knew that if they had unity, that they could, so to speak, circumvent God. They could receive life from this surrounding level of godliness. It says they receive from the nikveh, or from the holes in the skin, in the sarot, what's the hairs that come out, the tzipurnayim, and the nails, fingernails. Rak, mishum oridachab, it says no matter how, if you raise yourself up, as you can think that you're doing really good, like Haman in the Megillah, he was doing great. He was flying high in the beginning, and all of a sudden, 1 second, he was brought down. Which we're waiting for God to do now, but any second it's going to happen. Because God, there's two aspects of God. There's Hashem, how he's above any of the creation. That's above any of the creation. And then there's Havaya, how he makes the creation. Havaya is Ishtalshus. Yud is a little tiny dot. That's God's Chachma. And Hey, that's God's Bina, and Vav is 6, that's God's emotions. This is Ishtalshlus. This is how God makes the chain of creation. Vispashtus, coming down into the world, spreading out. We said Akudim, Nikudim, these are levels which are above the Chachma and Bina. In any case, God knows how to articulate himself, to conceal his light. And that's where the powers of evil exist, and that's how they exist now, and that's why Yaakov had to fight a battle against them. From there I will bring you down. To be drawn down in an inside way. Only in someone who's negated to him. So I just popped into my mind, maybe I can pop it out, but it popped into my mind. A joke. A fellow comes over to his friend's house and he sees that there's a trumpet there. He says, "What's this trumpet?" He said, "Oh, this trumpet, I stole it from my next door neighbor." Says, you stole a trumpet. Why did you steal a trumpet from me? You don't know how to play a trumpet. Says, yeah, my next door neighbor also doesn't know how to play. In other words, the trumpet can be a disgusting, noisy, disturbing instrument if it's not used properly. But if it's used properly, then it can be very pleasant, right? It can be very pleasant. A trumpet, right? It's sometimes the main instrument in jazz, especially, but in orchestras, a trumpet is a thing that at the very end. So it's the same thing with the whole world. The whole world is like a big instrument. If you don't know how to use the instrument properly, or you use it improperly, or you don't know how to play, then it's just disturbing. It's just terrible. Like they tell another joke that they say, I have a trumpet, and with the trumpet you can tell the time. He says, really? He says, watch here, look, it starts to play. All of a sudden, the neighbor upstairs pounds. Hey, it's 3:00 in the morning. What are you playing the trumpet for? If you don't know how to play, it disturbs people, right? It disturbs. The same thing with the world. But on the other hand, you're having a good time. You're waking people up. You're making a lot of noise. The world is an instrument. But you have to know how to play the instrument. But if you don't know how to play the instrument, then it's terrible. So what is the world? Is it bad or is it good? So the answer is yes. It's bad and it's good. But it has the power to go against holiness. This is by means of Esrus Delatata. How can we draw down godliness? How can we make the trumpet? Let's forget this trumpet. Let's say violin. Violin is a better. Violin can be more. It's much more beautiful. More. So there's a violin. If you don't know how to play it, it's terrible. I got a neighbor. The fact is, I have a neighbor that's learning to play violin, and it's just awful. I have to close the thing because he plays everything off tune and everything. Okay, he's playing, But if a person knows how to play violin, it's hypnotizing. It's the same thing with the world. The world can be terrible. It can be awful. But on the other hand, what you want God not to create the world just because it's so awful. We have to know how to play it. How do you know how to play the world? Is you have to be connected to God. How you be connected to God is you have to think. And this is the whole idea of an arousal from above, an arousal from below, and that's the Yaakov. Yaakov, it said last week, we learned that Yaakov, he worked with the sheep, and the sheep were Akudim and Nikudim and Brodim. This was these spiritual levels. He corresponded to these spiritual levels, namely Shiyat Simtsum or Ein Sof, that God, Yaakov made because he connected himself to the Creator by means of his understanding and his emotions and his determination and his deeds and his speech and his thoughts. So he drew down godliness from holiness specifically. Derech Bittel. Right? It's like the violin, knowing how to play properly. Yaakov knew what God wants from the world. Lochen, therefore, Yabek Ishimo, therefore, there was this battle. Sharotza Sam, because the powers of separation, they didn't want holiness. They don't want holiness. They want to be separate. They don't want to take lessons. They don't want to learn. They don't want to be controlled. They're okay the way they are. It says the word Esav means he was asui. He was already made. So it says, Yaakov, we're going to have to stop here and we'll do this tomorrow. And that's the battle of Jacob and the angel that we have to fight also in ourselves, namely the creation. Who's going to control it? The creation itself. It's going to be self-running, self-autonomous. It's not going to work. Or the creator. But then that requires work. That means you have to go against your nature. You have to go against nature. That's the whole battle of Yaakov and Esau. As we'll talk about more, God willing, Friday tomorrow. Now let's learn the Dvar Malchut.
There was a terrorist attack by the entrance to Yerushalayim about an hour and a half ago.
Well, Hashem will help us. Hashem will help us and give us only good news. One second. Let's turn this off here.
I thought there was a ceasefire today.